I started in 1951 and I finished in 1994. So I was there for 42 years. So I was leaving school at 16. I was in the fifth form of the school, and in those days we used to have a youth employment officer coming around the schools. We were interviewed and asked about what we'd like to do, what sort of work we'd like to do. Very different from today, when people are struggling to find work. We were just told, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? Would you like to go to BTH, British Thomson Houston, electrical engineers in Rugby? And I had heard of Rugby, and some friends from school in the previous year, they'd gone to Rugby and they liked it. So I thought, well, I'll go for that. So I said, well, I wouldn't mind going to Rugby and doing an apprenticeship. Somebody I knew who'd been at sea, and he'd seen in the ships there were electrical equipment made by BTH Rugby, so they knew about it, and he told me about it. So I learned that they made turbines and generators and other electrical equipment. The company manufactured everything from light bulbs to huge turbine generators for power stations. The chap I worked with, because you worked with a skilled electrician, and one morning he said, well, we've got to go to the power station this morning to replace some of the bulbs. So off we went to the power station, and the power station, and that's the site, produced its own electricity for the whole factories. And so we went off the power station, got in the power station. The power station was a huge building like a cathedral. You could hardly see the roof. And he said, right, we've got to change those lamps right up in that roof. And I said to him, well, how are you going to get up there? He said, I'm not, you are. So I said, well, how are we going to do it? He said, well, we're going to get up in the crane with the bulbs, and the bulbs were huge things, as big as pumpkins. And he said, right, you come in the crane with me. So we went along in the crane. Then he said, right, climb on top of the crane. I had to climb on top of the crane with the bulb and unscrew the old bulb and screw the new one in, hundreds of feet above the floor. So that was quite scary. Another occasion, the same chap, he said, well, I'm going to show you something today. So we went out around the site and went to a little place where there was a little brick building. Looked through that little window. There was a little square window that we looked through. So he said, look through that window. I looked through the window, and there was a jet engine. And that was one of the earliest jet engines that Frank Whittle had designed. So the first jet engine was actually built and developed on the BTH site.